Hey everybody, and welcome to another segment of AstrologyAnswers.com's weekly forecast. My name is Terence. The week begins on Monday, April the 8th, 2024. And on Monday is a new moon solar eclipse. It's being a solar eclipse, which happens roughly twice a year, it makes this new moon much more powerful. And often a new moon we have every month draws our attention to a certain area of our lives that will impact us for several weeks. But if this solar eclipse at 19 degrees of Aries is within a few degrees of a planet in your chart around 19 Aries, or the opposite 19 Libra, whatever that planet represents will be in high focus of change for at least the next 6 months. Also, 2 rules of thumb here. You don't want to make life-changing decisions the week before or the week after a solar eclipse. So this week is the first week, and you don't want to, with like that Aries energy, rush out with passion, with excitement, and jump into powerful new projects. Because with an eclipse, it's also hidden energies. It's a darkening of the light. You don't have all the information compounded with decision-making, communication Mercury that's retrograde until from April the 1st, last week, until April the 25th. And during Mercury in retrograde, you don't have all the information, or you're having misinformation. And a general rule of thumb, you don't want to sign contracts, make promises, make commitments to major projects in your life with Mercury in retrograde because something's missing, something you don't understand. Mixing that with the solar eclipse, this first week of that first week of the solar eclipse, beginning now, April the 8th, through the first week to April the 14th, it's best to just reflect and research, but not on whatever new directions, new paths, new jobs you want to initiate. But instead of acting, it's best to keep gathering information and maybe looking for other people's of experts, their opinions. Now, on Monday, the 8th, the moon in Aries, because it's a new moon in Aries, the moon will go void of course, 7:39 p.m. on the 8th, until Tuesday, the next day, at 4:24 a.m., at which point the moon that describes the public tone and reactions will move into Taurus. That moon, that new moon solar eclipse in Aries, Aries is very ambitious and assertive and restless, really wanting to jump the gun, take action. But because of Mercury in retrograde, because it's a solar eclipse, you have to try to refrain from jumping the gun, at least through this, well, even through Mercury in retrograde of April the 25th. Now, when the moon goes into Taurus, early Tuesday morning on the 9th, Taurus is so different than Aries. Aries is a fire sign. Taurus is an earth sign. When the public tone is in Taurus, we're more steady, we're more grounded, we're looking more for routine. But this moon in Taurus will be in a stressful square aspect to powerful transformational Pluto mid-morning Pacific time. That could be when there's these intense emotional power struggles, either with somebody else or within your own self. It can be very favorable for doing a lot of deep introspection, counseling, getting astrology reading. All of that could be favorable during this eclipse and the Mercury in retrograde, to do a lot of more of this research, this more coming to a deeper understanding of what's going on before you act on it. On Wednesday, the moon continues in steady, calming Taurus. It's going to cross over expansive Jupiter around noon, maybe to 1 p.m. Pacific time. That brings a certain amount of optimism, hopefulness, good for travel, good for education, good for marketing. By mid-afternoon, then the moon, as it's continuing through Taurus, will cross over liberating, innovative Uranus in Taurus. Moon to Uranus can trigger a lot of emotional surprises and excitements. It can be good for trying to break and liberate yourself from old, stuck patterns. But Mars, ambitious, assertive Mars, is going to be crossing Saturn. It's particularly at its peak on Wednesday the 10th. It's still going to be lingering through Thursday the 11th. There's two ways this can play out. The more limiting, frustrating side is all your ambitious Mars energy is being contained and blocked by restricted Saturn. So Mars-Saturn can make people feel really blocked, depressed, frustrated, angry. The positive, because it's just energy, is instead of being a victim of this energy, is to channel it and direct it towards having a goal, a project that you throw yourself into and really accomplish a great deal of work. Do not introduce new goals and projects, but you could be working really hard Wednesday and Thursday to finish up and accomplish old projects, previous goals. On Thursday the 11th, the moon, continuing in steady Taurus, will go void of course, 3:04 a.m. to 6 a.m. Void of course, I failed to mention it on Monday, but I mention it every week. The moon is in the process of changing from one sign to the next, but it's no longer making any aspects in the current sign, and so there's no energy. The energy is flat and unproductive. So especially during the void of course periods, during the Mercury in retrograde period, it is really important to not be making decisions and commitments, but do more of reflecting and researching and reevaluating. You know, do your exploratory path, action, exploratory action, investigative action, not yet committing and making and taking action. So at 6 a.m. Pacific time on the 11th, the moon goes into Gemini. Gemini is bringing all these ideas and jumping from one errand to another, one idea to another, can stimulate a lot of ideas and conversations, but also restlessness. And that Mercury in retrograde with the moon in Gemini, Gemini is ruled by Mercury, so that ruling planet of the emotional moon in Gemini, retrograde, will be crossing the sun. Usually, the sun, Mercury, brings a real focus and spotlight to learning, communication, and information. This is a positive, but with Mercury in retrograde, this might be when you're rethinking and changing your mind of what you were expecting or striving for previously before the Mercury went retrograde on April the 1st. So this could be a really favorable time to revising, re-editing, rethinking, changing your mind to get more refocused in a better direction. On Friday the 12th, The moon in Gemini, intelligent Gemini, will be in a hard angle to restricted Saturn, maybe early morning, 7 to 9 a.m. Pacific time. So that moon, you might be feeling kind of worrisome and cautious. And with Mercury in retrograde, it would be best to just slow it down. Don't get overwhelmed with responsibilities. Just take it step by step. Then right after the moon is in hard angle to Saturn, it's now in hard angle to assertive, ambitious Mars. So perhaps the earlier in the morning, Pacific time, you could be feeling very guarded and unsure and cautious. Then later in the morning, just after that, it's like, oh, the hell with it. I gotta go for it. But the Mercury's in retrograde and you're in that first week after the eclipse. So you might be, if you're jumping the gun and taking action, you may regret it. You might just be feeling a lot of anxiousness. One of the best things to do is to go exercise. Get that tension and patientness out of the body. On Saturday the 13th, the moon goes void of course at 7:46 a.m. till 10:45 a.m. when the moon goes into emotional, nurturing, sensitive Cancer. That Cancer can compel more family matters, events, usually people just wanting to just stay home and relax, enjoy the sanctity of your own home. On Sunday, as the moon continues in Cancer, in mid-morning Pacific time, it'll be in a stressful angle to social, pleasurable Venus. The moon is really desiring a bonding, and it's going after Venus, which is compromise and relationships, but it's kind of out of sync. So whatever you're trying to, accomplish socially, you might be feeling like things are off. But it's only lasting for an hour or two, mid-morning Pacific time. Mid-afternoon, the moon will be in harmony with grounding, stabilizing Saturn. So earlier on Sunday, where you might be feeling a bit off, mid-afternoon, a few hours later, you're going to be feeling more grounded, especially as we're coming out of the very end of that first week of the solar eclipse energy. But not yet time to be making really important decisions as Mercury is still retrograde till the 25th. I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope to see you next week with my next segment. Until then, be safe and well.